The Djinn are born of smokeless fire and pretty much hidden from our physical senses unless they don't want to be. Most people have seen the Disney movie Alladin, and for the most part, Djinn are pretty much known as Genie in the West, associated with fairy tales in Hollywood. Nobody really knows the origins of these supernatural beings, at least mythologically. They have been worshipped by Arabs since ancient times, though. The legend of the Djinn has branched off into many different forms, and all with their own interpretation. Like a lot of people in modern Islam, for example, may call them purely malicious entities and basically analogous to demons. I was going through some YouTube videos researching about the Djinn, and there's a lot of New Age spiritual groups who've got some interesting ideas on them. But they pretty much say that they're wholly malevolent, claiming them to be the source of shadow people and aliens, and are basically in opposition to humanity's best interests. There's a much bigger picture concerning their history and basically everything about them. It's easy to just sum up everything as evil and put it in a little box, but that's really rarely the case. In pre-Islamic times, the Djinn were considered to be wondrous supernatural beings capable of free will, able to do good, evil, and basically anything in between, just like humans. The term was also pretty loose, being applied to various supernatural entities throughout Arabic folklore. However, Djinn were never considered gods or immortal. They eat, sleep, breed, and die similar to people, just with a ridiculously longer lifespan. All scholars agree that their mythology originated in the Near East and Arabian civilizations, though the direct culture they spawned from is up for debate. Their earliest accounts state that they were spirits who dwelled in the desert or other unclean places and mostly took on the form of animals. The Djinn were said to inspire poets and artists and basically just creative types, similar to how the Muses do in Greek mythology. The Djinn also had unique personalities with individual desires just like humans. And if they got pissed off, they were capable of doing some pretty messed up stuff. They could cause mental illness, disease, and conflict, with some going so far as to claim that madness was actually caused by Djinn possession. Considered mostly to stick to their own kind, superstition of the past states that they made feared places their home, such as desolate, dark areas with little human traffic. In the old legends, they didn't want to interact with humans in any way, basically. Our entire, organic nature was just alien to them, I guess. But despite such an enigmatic origin concerning the legend of the Djinn, they would go on to have a place in the mythology of many mainstream religions throughout history. In Islamic theology, the Djinn are invisible entities that walk the earth long before humans. They're classified as entities undetectable by human sense organs, along with angels and other spiritual entities. Angels were made of light, the Djinn, fire. Angels were merely instruments of God's will, and therefore lacked free will, whereas Djinn were created with complete free will to do as they please. They lived back on Earth when it was still young, with many Djinn nations and tribes in a flourishing pre-human civilization. Or I should say civilizations, because the Djinn were pretty opposed to each other and did not get along. Many Djinn chose corruption over virtue, willingly committing horrendous deeds upon one another. One day, Allah sent an army of angels to battle them in an apocalyptic confrontation which basically destroyed their civilizations. After the war between the supernatural entities, the Djinn were driven out from the hospitable lands of Earth, to islands, the sea, and desolate locations. For this reason, the Djinn would basically have a permanent grudge against humanity because they once had dominion over Earth and are pretty pissed that it was given over to us. The Djinn were defeated and banished, but there was one among them that chose righteousness and never followed in his kin's sinful ways. The Djinn's name was Iblis, whom was so pure and righteous he was allowed to walk freely among the angels of heaven. Iblis worshipped Allah with all his heart, showing the height of virtue the Djinn had always been capable of. But when Allah made humans out of earth, he decided to test the entity. Allah told all heaven to prostrate themselves before the new creation. The angels obviously did so without hesitation because they lack free will. But Iblis refused. Even when Allah directly commanded him to bow, he defied the Creator. It was never meant for the beings of heaven to worship humanity. This was just requested by Allah as a sign of respect. Kneeling to humans was to acknowledge their special place in creation and relationship with God. Yet Iblis thought he was superior to humans, thinking us weak and lesser creatures. He wondered how something made of earth could ever be on par with living fire. Jealousy and pride growing within the once righteous Djinn. Iblis then asked for eternal life until the end of days, and Allah granted the request for some reason even though Iblis had just defied him. The arrogant Iblis then challenged the Creator, swearing an oath in God's might and honor that he shall lead humanity astray. But Allah just merely accepted the challenge, telling Iblis to tempt humans all he wants, and that all true servants of the Lord of the Universe would be immune to the influence of the Djinn race. Allah then cursed Iblis for all time until the Day of Judgment, and cast him out of heaven forever. And hence the Djinn are on earth to test the willpower of mortal humans for them to choose good or evil, at least in this mythology of them. But also in Islamic tradition, the Prophet Muhammad was sent to both the Djinn and human communities to spread Allah's message. He told them they were under Allah's judgment just like people and could gain access to heaven or hell depending on how they lived their lives. Also, the Quran's version of Solomon, the ancient king of Israel, was granted dominion over the Djinn by God to use their supernatural powers to build the first temple. In the modern Christian Bible, it was demons. So, the Muslim version of the Djinn are pretty distinct, yet still have a lot in common with other cultures' mythologies, such as the Djinn being placed parallel to humans just beyond our physical plane of existence. In ancient times, the Djinn were incredibly popular in folklore. Obviously, one of the most well-known being the Arabian Nights and the famous tale of Alladin, who receives a magic lamp which contains a genie that grants him 3 wishes. Now, there's many different cultures with folklore about them, or at least supernatural entities similar to Djinn, such as the 3 different types of Djinn mentioned in the story Maruf the Cobbler. In many of the tales, the protagonist used the Djinn to travel across vast distances instantaneously, allowing ancient writers to fill in plot holes with them consistently. In the West, they're analogous to fairy folklore. They're also found in some of the oldest recorded civilizations of Mesopotamia. The ancient Sumerians believed in Pazuzu, whom was made famous by the movie The Exorcist. Pazuzu being a wind djinn with a canine face, bulging eyes, and a scaly body. Even the Babylonians had their own versions of djinn. In Jewish mythology, the Shaddim, mentioned in the podcast episode Monster Legends 3, resemble the classic depiction of the Arabian Djinn. Similar entities are even found in Buddhism and Hindu traditions as well. And of course, in the case of Christianity, it's a no-brainer they'd be classified as demons. In Guanche mythology of the Canary Islands, there's a similar type of entity too, so there's really no shortage of Djinn lore from civilizations all throughout history. Djinn can take on the forms of humans or animals and are capable of dwelling in all conceivable inanimate objects, hence the legends of the Genie in a bottle. These entities vary greatly in levels of power and magical abilities as well as personalities. And though supernatural, they have all the bodily needs analogous to humans, with similar desires and weaknesses, including mortality. They are, however, much less dense and aren't chained by physical limitations, usually appearing as wisps of smoke or humanoid flames in their natural form. The Djinn greatly enjoy punishing humans for perceived slights, intentional or not, and are responsible for many outbreaks of disease and horrendous accidents. They're also said to be responsible for many cases of mental illness, being able to easily possess the mind and body of the weak-willed. However, even though the Djinn are incredibly powerful, they aren't invincible, and can even be killed. Human beings who know the proper magical procedure can exploit them to their own advantages, in some cases even enslaving them by binding them to worldly items, most of the time being a jar, lamp, or bottle. then be magically compelled to grant 3 wishes to anyone who sets them free. And when enslaved to grant wishes, many different things can come from such a prospect. It's not just a matter of instantly getting the wishes you want like we're used to in our media. For example, depending on the Djinn's moral compass, making a wish can either be a huge boon in fortune or a horrible fate worse than death. Djinn can be good, neutral, or evil just like humans, and if the person making a wish doesn't possess the attributes necessary to keep a malevolent Djinn in line, then those wishes could be twisted to the point they become dangerous. If the human making the wish has a weak mind or willpower, then the Djinn could just outright deny the request as well. Though most of the time, evil Djinn will attempt to harm their foolish masters, or ruin their lives outright. However, if someone frees a sinister Djinn, they can usually be defeated through wits because of their overwhelming arrogance. One simply has to play to their ego and superiority complex, with folk heroes usually tricking evil Djinn back into their prisons.